like that those many of people have just estimated our economy, and the estimate shows that like from 1900 to 1950s there was just 2.5% of growth rate uh, in our economy. Like it was not because of Britishers, it was just because of our peoples. uh, they are just producing the material and whatever, that's why that much of growth rate was just achieved. And now we came to agriculture sector. Like 85% of the population was directly or indirectly dependent on agriculture, and that much of population was just dependent on agriculture, but still we are not just producing that much. Like you could just see there was a stagnation and unusual deterioration. Like this was because of like the Britishers was not even just trying to improve it. And why, the reason is just given below. Like the agriculture productivity was just too low, but growth was there. Why growth was there? The growth was there because the area under cultivation was just increased, where the peoples have just cleared the forest and just they start doing the farming over that cleared land, and hence the land area under cultivation uh, increases. That's why the growth increases, but the productivity was low. The productivity was low uh, because of some reasons, because of lack of technology, because lack of irrigation facilities, and negligible use of fertilizers, because there was no technology in India at that time when the British were there, and they were not even care about it. Why they care? Because this is not their country. The stagnation was there because there was several ways they are just using, because they just want to get it, they just want to get more and more from our country. That's why they just implemented land settlement. What is land settlement? Land settlement is like they just appointed big zamindars. Like it was the thing what was just coming from the Mughal period. What Mughal did, they just appoint some zamindars, and what zamindars do, they just collect some revenue from the workers or the farmers or the whatever the cultivators are growing. It was one third at the Mughal period, but I don't know what the Britishers was just having the rate. So the big part of land was given to jamindars, and all other mere were the workers. They were just workers. They were just working on that land, and so all profit goes to whom? To jamindars, not to cultivators. And the main interest of jamindars was to collect the rent. Like most of the land was with jamindars, but still some land remains with some other peoples as a. That's why what jamindars did, they just start what they just they just want what they just want their revenue. They didn't care about whatever the condition they're having, whether there is a famine, there is any natural calamity or whatever. They didn't care about it. And why they were just means doing like this, why they are not caring about the Indians, whether, because the jamindars are also Indians, they should care about those cultivators. They were not caring about it because the duties they just take from them have some a fixed date, and they have to just like they have to deposit that particular sum uh, from till a fixed date, and that's why they have to collect it like harshly or whatever the way just they just take, they have to collect it. And if they just fail, if just means if they were unable to take that particular revenue from the people or from the cultivators, then they will just lose their rights, and they have to be like the same way the cultivators are having, like they have to live in poverty. That's why they just afraid of that thing. And another reason of stagnation that I have just mentioned, that the productivity is not too good because of the low level of technology. Technology was not there, like there was no tractors or something. They have just like hull. Maybe the Indian peoples know about it. The hull they have, the bulls they have. They just plow the land by the bulls and the hull. I don't know what the Hindi of this, like sorry, English. And there's many lack of irrigation facilities in our country, because Britishers didn't care about our country. They are just caring about what they just want more and more material from us. They didn't care what is how this material is coming, and they didn't tell about the fertilizers. Like what happens, we just have the organic fertilizers, but nowadays organic fertilizers is not that much, like you could just use over the whole land. That's why the productivity is just too low. but still the peoples of our country start going from ca- going from the subsistence crop to the cash crops. They're just going like they are growing cash crops like tea. Cash crops means like those crops which just produce more and more cash to the farmers, and that's why the commercialization of agriculture happens. Commercialization means like they are just having more and more money from that particular crop they just grow. But most of the Indians don't know about the cash crop. But ultimately the cash crops benefits the Britishers, because the cash crops especially being needed by the Britishers, they just take away from them and just produce it, means it is being treated like a raw material by the Britishers, and they just take it to the Britain and just produce it again into some other finished goods, and they just take it to India or some other countries to make gold or silver, whatever just being exchanged off. So there were some progress in irrigation, but India's agriculture starved off. Why? Because of the investment in tracing. Like there is no investment in tracing or whatever the plogging actually, and the flood control was not there. Because every time they just grow the thing, and there comes the flood and just it just destroyed all. Yeah, the whole, and the drainage system was not do good. Like the rivers are just coming this time, rivers overflows, or another time maybe the water didn't reach there. And the next reason is desalination of the soil, means like the salts are just going out of the soil. Like this thing is happening, and it is happening today as well. But at that time, today we are just putting some measures, but at that time there were no measures. That's why we have to go with the desalination of the soil. We have to face that particular issue. Now a small section of the farmers have a cropping pattern from food crops to commercial crops. Lekin the peoples who are just shifting from food crops to commercial crops, the cash crops, but just too low. That's why we are just not having that much of good contribution toward the economy because of that particular thing. But most of them had no resource, technology, incentive to invest in agriculture. That's why, because the lower section or the small section has just shifted from cash to food to commercial. That's why they didn't have the technology, no resource, and especially no investment, because Britishers never want to invest and India never have the much money. That's why agriculture is a ruin. Actually, it just got ruined because of particular Britishers. They just never focused over it. They just want the raw material, and they never want like our country should grow or whatever. Like now we came to industrial sector. Like in the start I had we had discussed, like India's handicraft industries declined and no replacement was allowed by the Britishers. India's handicraft industry declined. Why? We should have a reason. Because what the Britishers had did actually, they just start taking the raw material from India, and they just start means what, producing something or some finished good and take back to India and start selling their goods in place of ours. And what is happening, like what the thing we are making, the Indians are making in their handicraft industry, like textile or cotton or whatever the textile we are just making, there's a levy heavy duties over them or heavy taxes over them, so that we could not just sell those products. And that's why they could just sell their products very easily. They just take the raw material, produce it in Britain, and just take it back to India, and with no tax, that is more cheaper than our product, what we are producing by hand. Our product has just no doubt have more quality, their product have no quality, but still they are just selling their product, and our product is unable to sell. That's why what the handicraft industries, they start declining. And this way more and more peoples are just moving toward the agriculture, because the peoples have no work, then they have to work in the fields. They have to, because they just need the employment, and in this way the unemployment increases in India. So like I have just told you the whole thing. What they did, the decline of handicraft industry result in increase in unemployment in India, and it produced a new demand was fulfilled, cheap manufactured products for goods from the Britain. During 1850s to 1900, the industry began to take the modern industry began to take root, but very slow. Like all the industry, whatever had happened, whatever had was just flourishing in our country, was just totally ruined because of the Britishers' policies. And that's why there came the modern industry. Like we are just working through hands and making the cloths and all through hands only. But now there comes the modern industry. Like the industrial revolution was working in Europe and many other countries. That was just coming to India as well. So during 1850s to 1900, modern industry was coming to India, but the Britishers don't want that, and that's why it is just coming very slowly. Like its roots is very slow, and that's why it was confined to cotton and jute textile mills, because the cotton and jute is just grown in India at a large scale. That's why. So the cotton textile mills, mainly owned by Indians, were in the western part of the country, Maharashtra and Gujarat. And the jute mills, mainly by foreigners, dominated by foreigners, mainly in Bengal. Like Bengal is the place where the Britishers were in the more power, or in the great power. Like another industry, iron and steel industry in 1900, it was just start flourishing in India. And the major, I think you all know the name of this, the Tesco. The Tata Iron and Steel in 1907. It was just established in this year. Other industries as well like came to country, but it came after Second World War, like sugar, cement and paper. They came after Second World War. It is around 1945, after 1945. Capital goods industries are those which are produced, which produce machine tools, like for making another thing, like producing a material for current consumption. Like whatever the machineries we are just making to produce, like we just want to produce sugar, so for that we just want some machineries. So the machineries that is being produced, those machineries was being produced by the capital good industry, and that was totally nil in India. The establishment of the few manufacturing units here and there was no substitute to near wholesale development of the country's traditional handicraft industries. If we establish some manufacturing units somewhere at this part or another part of the country, then it will just never have a substitute. Means it will not never gonna replace the older our country's industries like handicraft industry. And the growth rate of the new industrial sector and its contribution to GDP was very low. The growth rate of industrial sector was just too low because of we are saying like we are not having that much of replacement for that particular oldest industry of our country, like that is the handicraft industry, and its contribution was to GDP was very low because we are not even just having a good growth rate. Why? Because we are not even replacing the oldest industry of our country.